Kalispera. Welcome to the Writing Your Future session. We are very happy to have Marina Hatsopoulos with us, live from Paros Island. Marina is a seasoned entrepreneur with a very rich bio. She has been involved in many business ventures and now is the chair of the board of Levitronix Technologies. Before we start, again, let me remind you that please feel free to send questions on the Whova platform, which I will address later on to Marina. Marina, welcome to Panorama. It's really great to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Fantastic. So, Marina, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. So I wanted to give a very brief background so that you know who I am. I studied math and music at Brown, and then I went and worked as a banker in New York. But I wanted always in my mind to be a technology entrepreneur. So I went to work for a big technology conglomerate. And there I realized that I was really missing technical background and I needed more education. So I went to MIT and got my master's in mechanical engineering. And my goal in doing that was to be able to communicate with engineers. At that point, the big piece that I was missing in terms of education, because I had a lot of business training at the bank and I had a technical education, but what I was missing was management experience. So I tried to get a management job, but I wasn't able to find one. So ultimately, I ended up finding a technology at MIT and sought out to commercialize it with several other co-founders. So this was back in 1994, and it was one of the early technologies for 3D printing. So we started the business in 1994 in Kendall Square in Cambridge, which is a technology hub very close to MIT. And we grew the business, and it was an amazing experience. But I got tired. I have 4 children, and we were building a family while building the company. So we ended up selling it in 2005. And since then, I've been on corporate boards, have done some angel investing, and more recently have gotten involved with the Greek startup ecosystem, which I think is really exciting to see what's happening here in Greece. I should mention that my parents are both from Athens, and I grew up coming to Greece every summer. So in terms of thinking about writing your future, one thing you'll notice as I talk about my background is that I had a long-term end goal, but I had a lot of twists and turns along the way. And in doing that, my resume didn't always make sense to other people. So that's why I wasn't able to get a management position, because they were confused as to why someone who had just gotten a master's degree in engineering was looking for a management position, because that would normally be a business degree. So what you have to think about is sort of your long-term goals, but start with who are you? So what do you love? What are you good at? Just naturally, forget about what people have told you or whatever. Like, what do you feel really confident about that you are good at? What classes in school were the most interesting to you? Which ones did you most enjoy? Which ones did you get the best grades in? And then one thing I would really push you to think about is, what unique experiences do you have, and what makes you particularly unique as a person? Either things you've done, your interests, or just generally what you're good at, who you are, what you find interesting. Each of us is very different, and sometimes it's not one particular thing that makes us different, but it's the collection of things that make us different. Really spend a lot of time thinking about that. The next is what I talked about earlier: who do you aspire to be? And an easy way to get started on that is, who do you see as your mentors, your aspirations? Who do you want to emulate? And for me, that was a big moment, because when I was working at the bank, originally, there were people who I looked at who I really wanted to be in their role. And then after a few years, that kind of lost its luster. That wasn't really who I was aspiring to be anymore. And so you need to check in with yourself, because as you learn more about things, that will obviously change. And then a critical piece of information that you need to get is, what is life like doing that work? And so it's really important to reach out to friends and to family to learn from their experiences. Because one thing you'll learn is that what you might romanticize from the outside, every job has its pluses and its minuses. And you may realize that some of the minuses of a particular path are really deal breakers for you. For example, flexibility on time. You know, certain jobs require you to be in a certain place at a certain time, to be at the beck and call of your clients, for example, if you're a lawyer. Other jobs might require you to travel all the time. Maybe you love that, maybe you hate that. So really understand what the job entails on a day-to-day basis. And then think strategically about what your long-term goals are. So for example, do you want to be an individual contributor where you're sitting in front of your computer, working on problems and coming up with solutions? Or do you see yourself more as a leader, someone who spends time talking to a lot of people, getting a lot of information, thinking strategically, and then sort of driving an organization forward? These are very different kinds of roles. And one thing I learned at the company is as the company grows, the role changes very much. So in our early days of the startup, that was the part I really loved. I loved having my finger in everything, knowing what was going on everywhere, knowing all the employees really well, and really exercising very different facets, like working on a spreadsheet one minute and designing a brochure the second minute. As the company grew, what was required was delegating responsibility to others, managing others, spending a lot of time nurturing the team and making sure that they were motivated and they had a well-articulated vision. And that was something that didn't come naturally to me. And I actually learned that from the people who worked for me because they were very good at that. For women or for men who want to have a very strong family life, you need to consider flexibility regarding children in thinking about a career. Surprisingly, one of the least known secrets about entrepreneurship is that it offers tremendous flexibility in the early days. Later on, it gets much more challenging. So I encourage you to make a 5-year goal, a 1-year goal, and break it down shorter and shorter until you have your tasks at hand for the next few weeks. And of course, this plan will evolve over time. What gives you a unique edge in pursuing this? So sit down and write down, what are your capabilities? What are you really good at? What experiences do you have that are particularly unique? What connections do you have that are particularly unique? Maybe through friends, through family, through your university. What other resources do you bring to bear that put you at an advantage? And as I said before, pay particular attention to what makes you different than everyone else in the world. What are your deficiencies in attaining that aspiration? So this requires a lot of soul searching. Really need to think hard about this, but what are the holes in your background that you need to fill, and how are you going to fill them? So to give you some examples, for me, the big hole that was missing was the technical background. So I went back to school and got my master's in mechanical engineering. For others, it may be the business side. So you really need to think hard about what do you need in your toolkit in order to be successful. But understand also that you don't need to be good at everything. If you are going to start up a business, for example, you'll have a team and everyone will have complementary skills that they'll bring to the table. So you don't necessarily need to have everything in yourself if you're building a team, but you need to make sure someone on the team has that capability. And then this includes not just experience and capability, but it even includes holes in your nature and holes in your approach. So as I said earlier, for me, delegating was very difficult. And I had to learn how to do that over time. I was used to micromanaging because in the early days of the business, it involves a lot of micromanaging. And so you have to figure out how you're going to make up for the deficiencies in your own weaknesses. And a natural thing to do when you're building a team is to find people who are similar to yourself, who you like, who you want to spend time with, But that's not really what you should be looking for. In fact, you should be looking for people who are complementary to you, who are very different than you, who have all the strengths that are your weaknesses. And I think that was one of the big strengths that we had at Z Corporation, was that we were so different. Our founding team, each of us were contributing something very different. The next thing you want to do, no matter what you're going to pursue, is build your network. So start to build your network today. It's not too early to do that, and keep it organized in some way that you can keep track of who you've met, when you met them, who they were, what their experience was, where do they work. Make sure you connect with them on LinkedIn as well, but take personal notes so that you can remember where you met them, what the context was, what you thought of them, and why they might be useful to you as you move along in your career. Because one thing that I have found so surprising is that oftentimes 10 years after I meet someone, something will come up and I'll want to go back to them. Either I want advice in a particular market that they have expertise in, or I meet someone who might, who's looking for a job and they have a business that is looking to hire, something random and strange. So LinkedIn is a great way on a high level to keep track, but you also want to keep track of your personal notes. Reach out to people you don't know, but when you do that, have a specific ask. So don't just reach out to someone who's famous because you think it would be really cool to know them, and then take an hour of their time without any real ask. If you want career advice, that's perfectly fair. Call them and say you're interested in their career and you're interested in pursuing it, and would they be willing to give you advice? Usually people are very generous with their time, but they don't want to waste their time. So make sure that you use it wisely. It's really useful to find mentors, people who have already tracked your path, and superiors both within and outside your organization who can help you move forward. Your network will carry you to new job opportunities, to board opportunities. That's how I got on several public company boards, because it's always easier for people, if they're looking to hire, to bring someone on the board or whatever, they would always prefer to bring someone that they already know, that they have experience with. So the broader your network, the more opportunities will come your way. So always use every opportunity to have meaningful interactions with people who are ahead of you in their careers, and ask them very openly and specifically about their experience, what they've learned, and any advice they have for you as you're going on your path. In terms of entrepreneurship, and specifically technology entrepreneurship, I thought it might be useful for you to hear some skills that can be useful to you. So one is a technical background for sure, so that you have the credibility, so you can talk to people. The other, for starting any business, is understanding accounting. Accounting is absolutely critical, because if you can't keep score, you can't win the game. Another is learning how to negotiate and how to sell. And both of those go hand in hand. You want to learn to negotiate in a way that makes the other person feel like a winner. And that will get you very far in life, both in business and in your home life. Learning how to negotiate is extremely important, and you will learn that when you get married. Management, learning how to manage people is useful no matter what you do. And so as you go about gaining experience, you will learn strategies in terms of execution and the best way for you to accomplish your goals and the ways that you work most effectively. So keep track of those. Every person has their own methods, and trying to fit into someone else's methods doesn't work. So for example, negotiation, you may be kind of a softie and have trouble taking a hard line. So learn to work within your own natural tendencies in order to be successful in everything that you do. In terms of being an entrepreneur, it's not for everyone, but there's tremendous opportunity in Greece today in entrepreneurship for a certain type of personality. So these are people who don't like to be told what to do. They're self-starters. They like to find a problem and solve a problem. They're very comfortable doing whatever it takes to solve the problem, even if that means breaking a few rules or not asking permission. They don't need rules to follow. It means that you're comfortable picking up the phone and speaking with a customer, making a cold call. Some people just hate doing that, but that's extremely important in the early days of building a business. The other is being comfortable making decisions with incomplete information. That is one of the biggest challenges of being an entrepreneur, because it's not like in school where you're given all the information you need to solve the problem. In fact, you have very poor information, but based on that, you have to use your own judgment to reach a conclusion, and you can't waste hours and days and weeks and months doing analysis on things. And then finally, the final point about entrepreneurship is you have to be comfortable with rejection and with failure, because both rejection and failure are a component of entrepreneurship from day one in terms of getting funding, hiring people, selling your product. You're getting rejected left and right, and you just have to laugh at yourself and learn from it and move forward. And generally, it's best if you're an optimist to do that. In terms of opportunities in technology entrepreneurship, technology entrepreneurship is a great way to create value, particularly in an environment like in Greece, which has high unemployment. You can create tremendous value. You don't need to be an inventor. You don't even need to be a founder. You can find an existing startup. You can find an existing team. You can find a group of researchers or a group of students. There's a lot of amazing research being done in Greece in universities, at research centers, and they're looking for someone on the business side to help them drive that technology toward commercialization. You don't need to have a technical background, and you can still contribute greatly. And the one last thing I'd like to say about entrepreneurship, in case you didn't realize it, is that it's really fun. It's crazy. It's like a roller coaster, lots of lows and lots of highs, but it's great to work with a team and to create a product where before there was nothing, and now you have something really new and something very different to show. And when you go around in the world and you see your product being used by other people to make their lives better, it's an incredibly gratifying experience. So I highly encourage it. So that's the end of my talk, and I would love to take any questions from the audience if anyone has anything.
Thank you, Marina. I think that was very, very useful, very concise and very useful. I have a question, basically, to start. Why do you think that so few people start their own business? What do you think? What hinders them from starting? Especially in Greece, I hear many people saying that, how can I start a business? There is no funding available. I don't have any money to start with. So I think that many Greeks are very afraid of starting their business. So what do you say to them?
Yeah, the fear is very well founded, and that's good. You should be fearful on the one hand. But on the other hand, there are pools of funding available. So at every stage, there is funding available. For example, if it's technology research, there are grants from the EU, and those are great for getting the technology to a certain state. You can get it patented. Once you've got patent coverage and you really know what makes your technology unique, then you can start to get seed capital and try to identify who your customers are, who cares about this most. And there's access to funding beyond venture capital. First of all, there's angel funding. So these are professional angels, or they can be friends and family. But also, don't forget customers. Customers are a terrific source of funding at the early stage. They may not have millions and millions of dollars, but they care the most about getting your product to market. If you have something really unique and very special, they should care a lot about it. And they may be willing to fund the early development. So I've worked with a company in the United States that has generated millions and millions of dollars of funding that is non-dilutive, that is just for research and development, both from the government. There are many government agencies in the US that support it, but in the EU, there's plenty of support. But they've also gotten it from customers who are very interested in pursuing their technology. So the tough part is that earliest stage, finding that research, finding out if it has potential, can it be patented? And if it can, what market cares most? What is the biggest problem that you're trying to solve? And I think the biggest challenge that people get into is that they will find a great technology. They don't really know what it's good for, but they think it's cool. And that's a problem, because you really need to find a customer who has a problem, and this is a solution to that problem. And so it requires a lot of conversations with customers in order to identify the specific needs that this will solve.
Great, thank you. Another question is, I think it's a question that I have heard quite a lot recently. When should someone, at what age should someone start their own business, become an entrepreneur? We hear all the stories about people not graduating because they have come up with an amazing idea and they decide to drop off the university and start their own business, especially in the United States. But also we hear the opposite opinion, which is first work, get some experience, understand how the business world works, and maybe start your business, I don't know, at the age of 30 or older. What's your opinion?
I think that's an excellent question. My personal feeling is I co-founded our business when I was 30. And I didn't feel totally ready. There was a lot of experience I didn't yet have. In the end, particularly as a woman who wanted to have children, I'm really glad I didn't wait any longer. I think it would have been extremely difficult if I had waited any longer. On the other hand, all the experience I had brought to bear was extremely useful to me in the startup. And I've worked with entrepreneurs who have never worked in another company. And I don't think that's a good idea. I think that if you're going to lead the company, I think it's really important for you to get some experience working in another company so that you can see best practices, you can see mistakes, how do people do things. There's a lot of learning that goes on. So I do think you need some work experience. I don't think you need a PhD. I don't think you even need a master's degree. I think it's good to get a college degree so that you have something. There's a very good chance that your startup will fail, or at least that your first startup will fail. And you want to always feel like, okay, I have something I can go back to. Like I can always get a job. I can, that you can fall back on. And so I think having a college degree is very useful. Having said that, obviously, if you're in the middle of getting your degree and you invent some incredible thing, and time is of the essence, and that's the only time you can pursue it, well, that's a very unique situation. But I think that's very rare for that to happen.
Great. We still have a few minutes, and I can see that 2 or 3 questions have come through. First of all, I think this is more of a statement. Thank you very much for your advice. Love your inspiration. It's so difficult to find or choose a mentor in order to find your path. So yeah, I think it's a matter of how do you find a mentor? Maybe, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I found some great mentors in college and then at MIT. I had a mentor at MIT who was just so dear to my heart. And he was so helpful at various stages. At every point in my career, at the bank, my boss was my mentor. He was amazing. In every chapter of your life, look at the people who are senior to you. Ideally, not too senior. If they're 20 steps ahead, that's not necessarily as helpful. You want someone who's 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead of you, and who cares about you, who you can develop an interpersonal relationship with, and who you can be very open and honest with about what you like about your job, what you don't like about it, what you're thinking about, what you're looking for. So just always be on the lookout for it. I have to tell you, there's a family friend. Now he's good friends with me and with my kids. He's a lot younger than I am. And he cold called me and just arranged for a phone call. And we had a phone call, and he was just so dogged about pursuing me and making sure we connected, and was very helpful. My daughter was applying to college, and he was helpful to her. And now he's become a close family friend. So you just never know how these things evolve over time.
Yeah, I think it's all about networking, as you said. You never know who you're going to meet, and if this person maybe in the end becomes your mentor. Okay, I think one more question. Do you think we should switch startup ecosystems? I mean, meaning leaving the Greece's one, if we see we do not have the ability to get enough resources?
So in other words, move your startup overseas?
I think so. I think that's what this person.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of venture funding today in Greece. And the first thing, if you're going overseas with a startup from Greece, the first thing they're going to want to know is, have you raised venture capital in Greece from the Greek VCs, because they would be the most natural. So I don't think you need to. So I would question that, whether you need to go overseas in the early days. When you're creating your market for your product, you will need to go overseas if you want to build a big business, because Greece is too small a market. And at that point, you definitely will need, for example, if you want to raise venture funding in the United States, you need to have a US presence. But that doesn't mean the whole company has to move to the US. It's really the Israeli model, where you keep your development team at home in Greece, and then you have your sales and marketing team set up in the US, and the CEO is going back and forth between those two teams. So there's a startup now in Boston called Workable, based in Athens, but also with an office in Boston. They have a development team both in Athens and in Boston, and the CEO is going back and forth. And so he gets the best of both worlds. He gets access to these amazing developers here in Greece, and who are very loyal, and then he also gets the market-facing benefits of being in Boston.
Excellent stuff. I think we have 2 more minutes. Maybe a quick answer to the following question. Which personal experiences help you boost your leading skills? Just for a minute, and then we have to wrap it up.
Try to lead in anything that you do. So if you play soccer on a Saturday team, take the lead. Whatever it is that you're doing with other people, take a lead role. Try to think strategically, think longer term, articulate it, practice your articulating skills and your connecting skills. Whenever you're with a group of people, make sure to connect with all of them. Yeah, I guess that's about it.
Fantastic. Marina, thank you so much for your, I think, valuable advice. It was great to have you here with us, and have a nice vacation.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. It's always wonderful to be in Greece. There is so much opportunity here, and I'm just sorry that I'm not there in person to see everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.